There is no bonfire hotter than that of free thought, nor a prison more fearsome than that where the soul is chained to what others consider true. Many winters ago, when the shadows of ignorance covered temples and thrones, a man walked among ashes and constellations. He wore no crown, nor did he carry a sword, but in his chest burned a flame that neither time nor fear could extinguish. His name no longer matters, because what he left us belongs not to history, but to the spirit. But those who still cling to forms will remember him as the Star Wanderer. They say it was in a cobbled city, where ancient columns stood as witnesses to the eternal. There, before the impassive eyes of the established judges, he was tied to a dry log, not for killing, not for stealing, but for looking up at the sky and daring to say out loud that the sky didn't end where the maps indicated. He didn't beg, he didn't curse. And when the fire began its cruel dance on his skin, he let out only one phrase, a seed suspended in the wind. They may light the flame, but they will never obscure the truth. But what history doesn't tell, what fearful pens refuse to record, is that before his last breath, the wanderer sent a sealed reliquary to a hermitage lost in the northern mists. Inside, there was no gold or sacred relics, but something more precious. Words that could not be spoken in public, thoughts not yet ready to germinate. And that chest, old and covered in cosmic dust, has come to you, not by chance, not by mistake, but because you, wandering soul, have reached the same threshold he crossed before burning in his awakening. My name doesn't matter. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's him. Or maybe you're the spark that will one day ignite a new universe. These words are not for the world. They're for you. For that part of you that has been dormant on the surface, but awakens deep within. Because the greatest secret was never hidden in temples or libraries, but in the echo of your own conscience. Are you ready to remember it? What you are about to receive cannot be understood by a fearful mind or by eyes that only seek proof. This is the alchemy of the soul. It is the geometry of destiny. It is a calling. And like all true callings, it doesn't come with promises, only with a mirror. I was afraid too. I too tried to fit into the world of forms, where the rules are dictated by those who fear the abyss. But the universe spoke to me in dreams. It whispered to me that there is no end, no center, no edge. That the soul is not enclosed in a body, but that the body floats within the soul. And that thought, that ethereal whisper that emerges in silence, that thought is creative. It shapes matter. It awakens realities. There is a power that cannot be taught in classrooms or repeated in temples. It's the power of remembering. Remembering who you are beyond the name, beyond the masks, the titles, and the chains. You are a universe, not a part, not a cell, not a breath. You are the whole, observing itself from a corner called me. And this I isn't locked into a birth date or a mortal body. This I is the spark that traveled across galaxies only to remember once again that it has never been separate from the source. It's no coincidence that you're reading this now. Everything in the universe happens at the perfect instant. And if these words have touched your heart, it's because you're ready. Ready to stop living in sleep. Ready to look at the sky not as something that dominates you, but as something that reflects you. Ready to light your fire, not to destroy, but to illuminate. And remember, don't be afraid of being burned by your ideas. Rather, be afraid of letting your soul grow cold from fear of thinking, because the only fire that does not consume is the one that ignites the truth. Chapter 1. The Silent Mirror of Creation. It wasn't on an ancient scroll, or in the pages of an occult doctrine. The revelation didn't come wrapped in incense, or veiled by a sacred teaching. It came one night when life, fragile as a candle lit in a storm, was almost extinguished. It was then, on the brink of oblivion, that the universe, in its infinite compassion, showed me what no one had ever dared to whisper to me, that everything that lived was created by me. I found myself in the city of mirages and canals, where time seems to drag itself between water and stones. There, in a rented room, with no company but fever and shadows, I lay on the cold floor, having been accused by an ignorant nobleman of thinking beyond what was permitted. The stones had been thrown, not only at my body, but at my soul. And the fever arrived like a heavenly decree. plunging me into a delirium that was not an illness, but a revelation. I saw my existence as never before, not as a sequence of memories, but as a dance of reflections. Every loss, every betrayal, every fall were not accidents of chance, but echoes of something deeper, of an inner strength that I myself had been emitting, unknowingly, from the most unconscious corner of my being. I saw the fear that had clung to me since childhood, like a child trembling under the table during a storm. I saw the guilt for having asked sacred questions in a land of caged answers. I saw the hunger for acceptance, thrown like a hook toward those who didn't even know how to accept themselves. And all of that, without exception, had been projected onto my path, like a sleeping architect drawing his walls with the brush of pain. Then I understood. I wasn't living what I deserved. I was living what I hadn't yet had the courage to transform. With trembling hands and a heart beating like an initiation drum, I sat up in the middle of the night, took a piece of paper torn from a forgotten notebook, and wrote with the ink of newborn lucidity, "The universe is a mirror, and you are the one holding the frame." At dawn, my body was still weak, but my consciousness shone as if I had been born again. That moment, that inner fire, was the beginning of everything. I named it the invisible map of the soul, because I understood that every human being walks within a secret design. It is not made of streets or buildings, but of crystallized thoughts and forgotten emotions, many of them inherited like seeds from the lineage that precedes us. And that internal map determines the paths our lives will take, even when we believe we are choosing freely. From then on, I became an observer of souls, first my own, then those of others. I saw a fisherman in Rome unwittingly repeating his father's mistakes, like someone praying a prayer without understanding it. I saw a noble lady attracting men who wore tenderness but hid thorns, while she cried out for love. I saw a child, never seen by anyone, grow into an adult whose words the world didn't listen to. They all walked, like me, within invisible maps, drawings that weren't on the ground, but in the soul. Routes marked by wounds, broken promises, shortcomings, and unspoken silences. And so I understood something deeper. Freedom isn't about escaping destiny. True freedom is born from redrawing the inner plane from which you are creating your reality. If there's a pattern that repeats itself in your life, if a pain seems eternal, motionless like a stone in the middle of a river, don't see it as punishment. See it as a sign, as a coordinate, like a crack pointing toward the light. Because you're not reacting to the world, you're projecting it. And when you become aware of that power, you never sleepwalk again. This was my first great secret, the beginning of a path without end. And that's why I write it now, not with the urgency of someone who wants to teach, but with the patience of someone who knows that the truth never dies. It only waits to be remembered. Chapter 2. The Voices that Inhabit the Silence. Remembering is sometimes a painful art. It's not enough to close your eyes or revisit recent days. You have to dig, sink into the damp earth of time. Go back, much further, until you touch with the fingers of your soul those moments when you didn't yet know you were deciding who you would be. Because many of the paths we walk today, without knowing why, were already marked before we even learned to name them. They were traced in silence, in obedience, in that moment when the soul, newly arrived in the world, absorbed everything like a sponge of light or fear. I was 7 years old when I first felt an idea, not my own, cling to my body like a foreign shadow. We were in the fields, collecting stones for the new garden. The air smelled of mud and unanswered questions. It was then that I dared to say, unaware that I was touching an invisible wall, "Why do rich people have such large lands if they don't work them?" My father looked at me as if I had awakened a sleeping god. He pressed his lips together in a mixture of fear and resignation and murmured, "Don't ask that again. It's not safe." Not for you, not for me. That day, what I learned wasn't a truth of the world, but a truth of fear. And that fear wasn't mine. I inherited it, like someone who inherits an invisible scar. I carried it without realizing it for years. It accompanied me in my silences, in the thoughts I didn't speak, in the dreams I folded and stored in a drawer that wasn't mine. It wasn't until many winters later, when I was already a man haunted by my own words, that I understood the magnitude of that spell. Much of what I thought wasn't really mine. They were ancient voices, those of parents, teachers, structures that clung to me like vines, sowing ideas like seeds without my knowing it, beliefs that imitated my inner voice, but were not born from my soul. And then I asked myself, with the rawest honesty, how many thoughts that inhabit me today aren't my own? How many decisions do I make out of fear of disappointing someone who's no longer even part of my story? How much guilt do I carry around for mistakes that should never have hurt? When the truth reached me, it was like a sacred vertigo. I felt like my mind was a desecrated temple, where other people's thoughts walked disguised as me. I then remembered an old rhetoric teacher I had in Paris, a wise man who spoke little, but thought with fire. He said, "Every thought must pass through 3 doors before entering the temple of the soul." Do I know this from experience, or because I've heard it 1,000 times? Does this thought expand me, or confine me? Would I choose it if I weren't afraid? Just 3 questions. Simple ones. But if you ask them with your heart uncovered, you'll see how many of your certainties crumble like sandcastles. And that, believe me, is a blessing in disguise. Because when you manage to dismantle a thought that isn't yours, you don't just regain freedom, you regain a piece of your soul. If these words have touched you, try this now. Choose a thought you have about yourself, one that hurts, one that limits. Ask yourself, who planted this idea in me? What gaze? What silence? What wound left it there? And if you can't identify its origin, it probably isn't yours. And if it isn't yours, it doesn't have to continue to govern you. Today I see clearly that much of human suffering is not born from the soul, but from the echo of inherited thoughts. Imposed thoughts, thoughts sown with fear and reaped with guilt. But you can choose, not all at once, not in an instant, but step by step. Every time you choose a thought that springs from your truth, a crack opens in the wall of illusion, and the light enters. I understood it when I was already burning inside. But you don't have to wait for the fire. You can wake up before then. Chapter 3. The Face That Dwells in the Darkness. There are journeys that don't require suitcases or maps. Journeys that aren't made with the feet, but with the soul. The deepest of all is the one that takes us inward, to the caverns where what we avoid seeing resides. It was in a monastery lost among the Italian hills that I began that descent. San Domenico, a place of silences that spoke louder than any sermon. I was 20 years old and had a naive passion for philosophy, for truth, for light. But there were nights when something inside me would shatter like glass for no visible reason. I would become distant, impatient, even cruel. I would feign calm, while inside I was burning with judgment and storms. An elderly friar, whose silence was wiser than 1,000 words, watched me in those days. One night, as he swept the cloister with slow movements, he spoke to me without looking at me. "Your light is strong, but you use it to hide in it." I didn't understand, or I didn't want to understand, but his words stayed with me like a restless seed. They haunted me like an endless echo, until one morning, I decided to face what I still couldn't name. I locked myself in the monastery chapel. No lamps, no prayers, no words. Just a lit candle, trembling like my will. I sat facing myself, asking nothing, waiting for no answers, just watching. And that's when she appeared. Not as a specter, not as a monster, but as pure, dense, ancestral emotion. Rage. Rage at having been silenced. Rage at not having been seen. Rage at carrying a fire that no one knew how to tend. That rage, repressed for so long, no longer belonged entirely to me. It had become a shadow. And from that shadow, it governed my reactions, my relationships, my decisions. It didn't destroy me. It guided me without my noticing. I cried, but not from pain. I cried for recognition, because for the first time, I saw myself whole, without disguises, without the purity one feigns to be accepted. Just me, and everything I never dared to embrace. And then I learned something that no book, however sacred, teaches. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that still waits to be seen without punishment. When you integrate it, you don't just stop fearing it. You regain energy. You regain clarity. You regain, above all, the truth. If you are reading this, if something inside you has not yet fled, listen carefully. What you judge most in others is usually what you haven't yet wanted to look at in yourself. And the more you repress it, the more power you give it. The shadow doesn't dissolve with denial. It grows stronger. The shadow grows in the darkness of rejection. Today, if you can, if you dare, sit in silence. Ask yourself honestly, what part of me have I hidden to be loved? What emotion do I reject because I was taught not to feel it? You don't need to fight your shadow. You just need to see it. Sit beside it without running away, without wanting to correct it or eliminate it. Just see it and say, I recognize you. You don't have to hide anymore. Since that night in the chapel, whenever something irritates me, I don't react immediately. I stop, I breathe, and I ask myself, what is this revealing that I haven't yet accepted in myself? Sometimes it's my wounded ego. Sometimes it's the fear of failure. Other times, it's the silent desire to be remembered. Every emotion we deny becomes a shadow, but every shadow we accept becomes a teacher. If you're still here, reading these words, it's because you too are ready. Not to fight your darkness, but to reconcile yourself with it. Because even that which you sought to eliminate from yourself can be transformed into creative power. The shadow, when seen with love, becomes a guide. And then, finally, you can walk whole, without fear of your light, without fear of your night. Just you. Real, whole, free. Chapter 4. The Womb of Silence. Not all beginnings come with fanfare. Some arrive clothed in silence. They arrive like an absence, like a winter that no one announced. That was the day I realized that emptiness wasn't the end of my journey, but the beginning of something much deeper. The year was 1576. I remember the solitude without drama, without tragedy, only as a dense presence. I was in a cell borrowed from a monastery that had taken me in out of compassion, not merit. Without disciples, without books, without words, as if the universe had stripped me of everything I thought I was. There was no enlightenment in me, nor despair, just a strange feeling, as if I had disappeared without dying. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know why I had come. I was simply a body breathing in time. And then, one night of thick cold, I took a piece of almost consumed charcoal and wrote on the white wall, as if my soul was crying out through that line. Who am I when there is nothing left? The next day, I did nothing. I didn't speak. I didn't search. I didn't write. I just was. No struggle, no expectation, no distraction to save me from myself. It was emptiness, pure and absolute. But something inside me, something deeper than my voice, began to awaken. And it was there, in that stillness that seemed like death, that the most luminous thought I've ever had emerged. It wasn't an idea. It wasn't an epiphany. It was a soundless voice that murmured, "Emptiness is not death. It is the womb."
And I understood. The emptiness wasn't coming to destroy me. It wasn't punishment. It was space. It was preparation. It was a sacred womb that was gestating me again. The beliefs I had let go of, the names I no longer spoke, the need to be right, to stand up for something, to be someone. All of that had dissolved not as loss, but as opening. It was as if the soul, patiently, finally said, "Now that you've stopped filling yourself with noise, I can talk to you." That day I knew, as truths that need no explanation are known, that emptiness is not the end. It's the threshold. It's the virgin space where the eternal can begin to create. Because as long as the soul is filled with inherited thoughts, foreign demands, unhealed memories, there is no room for the new. The void, although misunderstood, is the womb of reality. And if you, now at this moment in your life, are feeling that sense of emptiness, as if nothing makes sense, as if everything has vanished, don't run away. Don't rush to fill it with more things, more goals, more voices. The world fears emptiness. That's why it drowns it out with noise. But you can do something different. Stay. Listen to him. Look inside him like someone observing a seed asleep under the ground. Ask him, what am I holding on to that no longer has a place in me? What wants to emerge if I finally give it space? In the heart of silence, consciousness whispers what noise doesn't let you hear. And when you stop resisting the void is transformed. It becomes a receptacle. It becomes a possibility. It becomes creation. From that day on, I stopped teaching from knowledge. I began teaching from silence. I no longer offered answers. I held the space. I allowed others to listen to themselves. I understood that the greatest wisdom isn't transmitted. It's revealed when the soul feels safe to speak. And that surrender to silence changed everything. If you're still here, if these words still resonate within you, it's because you felt it too. That nothingness, that dispossession, that feeling of being emptied. Today, I want to tell you this, that nothingness is not your end. That nothingness is the beginning of everything. Chapter 5. The Alchemy of the Wounded Soul. There's a wound that doesn't bleed, but it weighs heavily. It can't be seen, but it marks the pace. It isn't screamed out, but it trembles inside like a constant echo. It's the wound of the soul, one that isn't born from a single blow, but from small fractures accumulated in the invisible memory of the being. For years, I tried to ignore it. I covered it with knowledge, with discipline, with devotion. I wrapped it in beautiful words, in lofty thoughts, in well-crafted silences. But there it was, patient, deep, waiting not to be cured, but to be acknowledged. It was during a slow twilight, when the sky seemed to be wavering between night and day, that I felt the call. Not like a voice, not like a vision. It was more like a sweet weariness, a whisper that told me, enough of running forward. So I sat down, not to meditate, not to search for answers. I sat like someone who's surrendering, like someone who decides for the first time not to protect themselves from their own truth. The wound began to speak to me, not with reproaches, not with drama. It spoke in images, in sensations, in loose memories that floated like leaves on the river of consciousness. I saw the child I had been, wondering why he wasn't enough. I saw the teenager who feigned strength to avoid showing fear. I saw the man who accumulated achievements as if they were shields, when in reality, they were armor that prevented him from feeling. The wound wasn't asking to be healed. It was asking to be loved. And that's when I understood something that no teacher had ever taught me. Soul wounds aren't mistakes. They're portals. They are not there to be eliminated, but to be transmuted. Alchemy is not a physical act. It's a transformation of consciousness. The gold the ancients sought wasn't a metal. It was the result of embracing the shadow with such compassion that it became light. That day, I discovered that there is no such thing as useless pain if you listen with an open heart. That even the densest experiences hold within them a core of wisdom waiting to be released. Not through analysis or denial, but through direct, naked, honest contact. We often believe that healing is forgetting, but healing, in truth, is remembering without pain. It is looking at the past, not with nostalgia or guilt, but with gratitude. Because every wound that hurt was also a door that opened the soul toward its expansion. And then I understood another truth, soft as a dawn in the empty fields. What hurt you didn't come to destroy you. It came to show you where you had forgotten your light. From that moment on, whenever I felt a pang of sadness, a twinge of anger or fear, instead of pushing it away, I reached out. I listened. I gave it space. I asked, "What are you teaching me about myself?" And I began to discover a new language. The language of the wounded soul. It's a language that speaks not in logic, but in symbols. It doesn't express itself in certainties, but in silences that reveal. And, in each silence, a step closer to the center. Toward that place where one no longer seeks to be loved, because one has remembered that love cannot be begged for. It exists. If you've come this far, perhaps you too carry a wound you haven't wanted to look at. Perhaps you've also built a temple of words to evade the gentle cry of your deepest pain. And if so, listen to me. You're not broken. You're in process. You're not lost. You're being reoriented. You're not alone. We're all, deep down, learning how to find our way home. And sometimes, that home is simply the hug we learn to give each other when we can no longer hold ourselves together with masks. The wound is not your enemy. It's your initiation. It's the fire that forges, the clay that molds, the crack through which truth enters. Don't be afraid to look at it. Don't be afraid to mourn it. Don't be afraid to honor it. Because in that humble act of returning to you, without embellishment or defenses, true alchemy begins. That of turning what hurt into purpose, what burned into wisdom, what bled into compassion. Today, if you can, do this little ritual. Sit quietly, place your hand over your heart, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, what wound still asks to be looked at with love? You don't need to solve it today. You just need to see it. Name it. Thank it for what it has protected and what it has taught. And little by little, tenderly, allow it to transform. The alchemy of the soul doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the moment you choose to stop running away. The moment you understand that your story doesn't define you, but it can be the raw material for your awakening. And if you still hear me, if these words resonate within you, then I invite you to continue. Because there's still a long way to go. And even if the wound was deep, the soul is even deeper. And at its center shines a gold that no one can take away from you. The gold of having returned to you. Chapter 6. The Art of Trusting in What Is Not Yet Seen. There comes a moment in the soul's journey when one no longer has maps. When external signs fade and everything learned seems useless. It is the silent crossing between what was and what has not yet been born. An invisible threshold where the mind demands certainty, but the heart whispers faith. I've been there. And maybe you've been there too, or are. It's that point where the old no longer holds you, but the new has yet to reveal itself. It's like walking in a fog. You take one step, but you can't see the next. And yet, something inside tells you to keep going. That something is called trust. Not the trust based on evidence, but the kind that springs from the soul like an underground river. The kind that doesn't need guarantees because it reminds us of a truth older than fear. Life doesn't push you into the abyss to destroy you, but to teach you that you can fly. For a long time, I believed faith was an emotion. Then I understood it's a choice, a conscious decision to walk into the unknown with the eyes of your soul open, even if those of your body tremble. It's not about denying fear, but about not allowing it to decide for you. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the decision to move forward despite it. It's staring into the void and saying, I don't know how, but I know something holds me up. It's surrendering, not from defeat, but from surrender. Because the art of trust isn't about having all the answers, but rather holding the question with love. It's about inhabiting uncertainty as one inhabits a temple, in silence, in reverence, in presence. I remember one day when everything seemed to have fallen apart. My plans had collapsed. Relationships I thought would be eternal had dissolved. And inside, I felt like a broken vessel. I sat in the middle of that symbolic dust, and for the first time, I didn't ask for an exit. I just said, show me what this emptiness is for. And I heard nothing. I felt nothing. But something changed. A subtle warmth began to grow inside. It wasn't comfort. It was clarity. It was a formless, yet rooted certainty. Everything has a sacred time, even silence. From that moment on, I began to live from a new consciousness, that of trusting not because everything is clear, but because everything is alive. And what is alive is transformed. What is alive does not remain broken. What is alive always finds its way to the light. If you're reading this, you may be crossing your own invisible bridge. Perhaps you're between decisions, between versions of yourself, between dying stories and futures yet to be drawn. And if so, let me tell you, it's okay to not know. It's okay to feel afraid. It's okay to stop and breathe. But above all, it's okay to trust. Because within you, there's something that already knows the way. And you don't need to see everything. You just need to follow the step revealed today. One, just one, every day. Faith isn't measured by how much you believe when everything is going well. It's measured by how much you give when nothing seems to make sense. It's measured by your ability to look into the night and keep sowing stars. Today, if you can, do this practice. Close your eyes. Bring your attention to the center of your chest. And from there, from that inner temple, silently repeat, even if I don't see the path, I trust in the life that lives within me. Even if I don't understand the moment, I trust the soul that guides me. Even if everything changes, I remain. And breathe. Once, twice, 3 times. Slowly. With presence. Remember, every time you trust without seeing, you are seeding reality. You are telling the universe, I am ready to receive what I don't yet understand. And in that openness, miracles begin to happen. Not the spectacular miracles, but the subtle ones. That unexpected encounter, that idea born in the shower, that synchronicity that reminds you you're not alone. Because trusting is also recognizing that you're not here by chance, but by purpose. And that purpose doesn't always reveal itself immediately. Sometimes, it only reveals itself when you've already taken the leap. When you've already said yes to what without knowing what. When you've already relinquished control and handed the wheel over to greater wisdom. The art of trust isn't taught. It's incarnated. It's cultivated step by step, like the art of walking on water, not because the water becomes firm, but because you become light. And if you ever feel like you can't take it anymore, like everything's falling apart again, remember this. Sometimes life makes you lose yourself only to teach you how to find yourself unconditionally. Trust, even now, even without knowing. Because there are paths that only open to those who dare to walk with the eyes of their soul. Chapter 7. The Secret of Acting from the Soul and Not from Urgency. We live in a world that rewards speed, rapid response, and relentless productivity. A world where moving is confused with advancing, doing with creating, acting with awakening. In the midst of this frenetic dance, many walk aimlessly, guided by haste rather than truth. But there comes a point on the inner journey where one begins to differentiate the impulse of the soul from the drive of the ego, where one discovers that not all action is creation, and that not all urgency comes from the heart. It is there that the sacred art of acting from presence, not from noise, is born. Acting from the soul is moving without haste, but with intensity. It's responding to an inner call, not an external expectation. It's letting life flow through you, and then express itself through you, like a river that doesn't need to be pushed, because its very essence is to flow. I myself was a slave to urgency for years. I woke up with a to-do list and went to bed feeling like I hadn't done enough, as if something was always missing, as if rest were a guilt and not a sacred right. Until one night, exhausted inside, I heard a soft voice inside. You didn't come into the world to be efficient. You came to be authentic. That phrase disarmed me, because I understood that many of my actions weren't free, but reactive. That many of my decisions didn't come from the soul, but from the fear of not being enough. And that even my greatest achievements were empty if they didn't come from a true center. Since then, I started asking questions before acting. Does this decision come from my soul or from my anxiety? Does this movement bring me closer to my truth, or does it just applaud my masks? Am I responding to love or reacting to fear? Acting from the soul requires prior silence, not to remain still, but to align. Because the soul doesn't shout, the soul whispers, and only in profound silence can it be heard. It's a subtle language, measured not by results, but by coherence. When you act from the soul, time expands. Everything becomes simple, though not easy. Decisions don't need to be explained because they feel true. You don't have to convince anyone, not even yourself. The peace that accompanies such action is the greatest proof of its authenticity. And yes, sometimes that action may seem illogical. It may seem inefficient. It may not fit the world's timetable. But when the soul directs, the universe responds with synchronicity. What seemed uncertain becomes orderly. What seemed chaotic reveals its purpose. If you're going through a time when you don't know what to do, perhaps the answer isn't to do more, but to do less. Less to please, less to please, less to prove something to yourself, and more to honor your rhythm. More to speak the truth, more to listen to what you already know, but have been afraid to live. There is a dance between intention and action that can only come from the heart. It is this dance that creates realities. Not imposed goals, not learned demands, but the pure vibration of an action born from inner alignment. I invite you today to take a sacred pause, to close your eyes, to breathe deeply, and ask yourself, what is the most loving action I can take toward myself today? What energy am I operating from? From fear or from faith? What can I stop doing to get back to myself? And don't answer quickly. Stay with the question. Let it work on you. Because often, the most transformative action isn't doing, but stopping doing. Stop forcing. Stop running. Stop pleasing. Remember, you didn't come to this world to fill agendas. You came to embody a unique frequency, a melody that only you can emit. And to do that, you need to act from the soul, not from urgency, not from scarcity, not from comparison. The soul doesn't compete. It doesn't rush. It doesn't justify. It just expresses itself with simplicity, with power, with truth. And when you do it this way, the world recognizes it. Because the world is also tired of falsehood. Because the world is also looking for authenticity. And when someone acts from that place, it awakens in others the memory of their own essence. Acting from the soul is the most revolutionary act of our time. It is saying to the world, I didn't come to fit in. I came to incarnate. I didn't come to please. I came to radiate. I didn't come to obey fear. I came to honor love. And every time you do it, even with a gesture, a word, or a silence, you are reminding the universe who you really are. So today, take that step, but not out of haste, not out of necessity. Take that step from the soul and watch how everything begins to change. Chapter 8. The Power of Patience, the Seed of Time. In the maelstrom of time, everything seems to move so fast. The speed with which hours turn into days and days into years is so dizzying that we often forget that true power lies not in speed, but in patience. We live as if the future depended on what we do today, as if the hours of this moment were the only currency that guarantees our future. But at the heart of this urgency lies an essential truth. Time is not an enemy that dwindles. It is an ally that silently grows. Many years ago, on a trip south, I came across an ancient tree. It was a tree that seemed to speak only with its presence. Its branches stretched toward the sky. Its thick trunk, wrinkled with history, conveyed a peace I couldn't understand. I approached it, touching its bark, and a feeling of deep calm enveloped me. Then, almost imperceptibly, I felt a lesson the tree was whispering to me. A lesson I took for my life. Patience is the soil where everything that grows with true power. If you want your dreams to come true, don't rush them. Like a tree, you must let your roots take root before you can reach the sky. At that moment, the tree didn't speak to me about speed or urgency. It didn't speak to me about what I should do or what I should achieve. It simply invited me to be present, to listen to the natural rhythm of the universe, to understand that there are cycles that cannot be forced, only experienced. That is the first lesson of patience, understanding that not everything we desire can be reaped immediately. Today, when I look back, I see that the most valuable things in my life didn't come instantly. The most profound insights, the most meaningful relationships, the most fulfilling moments of growth didn't happen in the blink of an eye. They were the result of patience, of allowing the seeds to germinate in their perfect timing. And life itself, like a tree, has its own rhythm. Time, like the soil that nourishes the seed, cannot be rushed. The greatest work we can do is to learn to wait without anxiety, without resisting the natural flow of life. Because in the end, it's not time that controls us. It's we who learn to work with it. In moments of silence, where haste dissolves, we discover a profound truth. The present moment is enough. Everything we need is already here, in the now. And true wisdom lies in understanding that the fruits of our actions will come at the right time, if only we know how to wait without despair. Patience is, therefore, the art of trusting in what we cannot see. It is the ability to sow with faith, to nurture with love, to wait without complaint, knowing that what we have planted will grow. Roots grow stronger in the darkness, before the leaves can emerge toward the sun. The process is not always visible, but it is always necessary. Patience is also the acceptance that some answers won't come today, that some wounds won't heal in the blink of an eye. It's an act of faith in the mystery of life. In life, sometimes the best action we can take is to wait, not in a passive sense, but in an active sense, one of trust, of presence. If today you find yourself in the midst of waiting for an answer, waiting for a change, waiting for an awakening, I want to invite you to reflect on the purpose of that waiting. Perhaps it's not just the outcome that matters, but what happens within you while you wait. Perhaps patience is, in fact, a path to your inner transformation. Patience is not just a virtue, it's a gateway to wisdom. As you learn to wait, you open yourself to a deeper understanding of life's mysteries. What seems uncertain, what seems unattainable, becomes clear when we let time do its work without rushing. So, the real question is not whether we can wait, but how we wait. We can wait with anxiety, with fear, with haste, or we can wait with serenity, with confidence, with gratitude. We can trust that what is to come, sooner or later, will be right for us. I remember a conversation I had with an old friend. I was telling him about my hopes and dreams, about the anxiety I felt that things wouldn't happen quickly. He listened to me in silence, and then he said, "You have to understand that time doesn't run out. Patience isn't just waiting, but how you live during that waiting. If you live anxiously, you miss the present. If you live with confidence, waiting becomes part of the creative process." His words left a profound impression on me. Time isn't something we control, but it is something we can harness. When we learn to be present in each moment, without demanding the future arrive immediately, we begin to see that what we're seeking isn't outside, but within us. The seed of what we desire has already been planted. We just need to give it the space to grow. Today, if you feel like time is running out, if you feel like everything is slipping through your fingers, I invite you to stop for a moment. Observe the tree in front of you. See how its roots extend, how its trunk grows strong, even if it's not always visible to the eye. Let that image inspire you to trust your own process. Everything you need to grow is already within you. Just give it the time it needs to flourish. Chapter 9. The Art of Letting Go of Control. The Freedom of the Soul. In the constant quest for control, for mastering everything, we forget the deepest truth. Life cannot be controlled. No matter how many plans we make, how many strategies we follow, there are forces far greater than ourselves that govern the flow of what will happen. What we can control is our disposition, our attitude toward what comes, but never how or when. For years, I struggled with this truth. I clung to my certainties, to my expectations, to the belief that if I could control every detail, everything would happen as it should. But life, with its infinite wisdom, showed me that control is only an illusion. The moment I learned to let go of it, I truly began to live. I remember one summer afternoon when, after months of frantic efforts to achieve a goal, I felt everything falling apart. What I had worked so hard for wasn't bearing the expected fruit. My mind, tied to the idea of success, sank into despair. It was then that I met a wise old man, someone who knew nothing of struggle or resistance, someone who simply lived with the grace of acceptance. He looked at me silently, and with a deep look said, "Life doesn't belong to you. It's not about what you can control, but what it allows you to be." Those words resonated with me like a distant echo, and I felt deep inside that there was something I needed to understand. It wasn't a matter of effort, of struggle. It was a matter of letting go. Letting go of the need for things to happen the way I expected. Letting go of the desire to always have the last word in the process of my life. The act of letting go is one of the most profound we can perform, because in letting go, we free ourselves from the invisible bonds we have created. Control is a chain that keeps us in the illusion of security, but deprives us of true freedom. When we are so obsessed with directing the course of events, we lose sight of what truly matters, the experience itself. Life isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to be lived. And true freedom, the freedom of the soul, is born when we let go of holding on to what we can't hold on to. It's an act of faith, of trust in the unknown, in the mystery that lies behind every event. Think of nature, how everything grows and develops without anyone having to force it. The seed doesn't worry about when it will sprout. It knows that, in its perfect timing, it will blossom. The tree doesn't try to rush the sun or the rain. It simply exists, in its perfect dance with the universe. In the same way, we are part of that natural cycle. We cannot rush what is destined to happen. By doing so, we only exhaust ourselves and become frustrated. The art of letting go of control is understanding that we are temporal beings, constantly changing, and that our essence is not tied to what we gain or lose, but to how we live each moment. The act of letting go is, At first terrifying. We fear uncertainty. We fear that if we let go of control, we'll lose our way. But it's precisely in that surrender that we find peace. Because when we surrender, when we let go of the weight of control, life itself takes over as our guide. It takes us to places we never imagined, shows us paths we would never have consciously chosen, but which in the end turn out to be the ones we needed. I remember a specific moment when I felt like everything was falling apart. My life, my plans, my expectations. It was as if the ground beneath my feet was slipping away, and I didn't know which way to turn. But in that emptiness, I found clarity. Somehow, by letting go of fighting what was happening, I began to understand what truly mattered. My inner peace, my connection to the present. That night, as I sat in silence, I realized that control was nothing more than an illusion created by my fear of the unknown. True strength lies in surrender. And when I surrendered, that's when I felt I truly began to live. Somehow, the universe stopped being an enemy and started being an ally. Today, I look back and realize that many of the greatest blessings in my life came when I let go of trying to control everything. Life takes me where I need to be, not where my ego thinks I should go. And when I let go of that need for control, the path opens up before me with amazing clarity. I invite you, if you're reading this, to pause and reflect on the times you've clung to control. What happened when you let go? What did you discover when you surrendered? I'm not asking you to abandon your dreams or stop taking action, but to trust the natural flow of life, its perfect rhythm. Control won't give you peace. Peace comes when you let go of the need to control everything, when you let the river of life flow at its own pace. And when you do this, everything falls into place. Everything finds its place, and you find yourself at the center of your own existence. Life doesn't need to be controlled. It needs to be lived. It needs to be felt. And when we surrender to it, when we let go of the reins with confidence, that's when the real magic begins to happen. Remember this: the moment you stop forcing things, things begin to flow to you. Because in letting go lies true power. And in that power lies freedom. The freedom to be yourself, to live fully, to be part of the eternal dance of the universe. Chapter 10. The day I understood that love is not sought, it is found. At some point in our lives, we all search for love. We search for it in people, in accomplishments, in objects we believe will complete us. We search for it externally, as if it could be found somewhere in the world other than ourselves. And we do so with such desperation that we fail to understand that, in reality, love has never been something we can search for. Love is something we are. I remember well the day I understood this. I was sitting in the park, alone, as on many other occasions. Around me, people were walking, talking, laughing. The sound of the wind caressed the trees, and the sun gently slipped through the leaves. But something inside me wasn't at peace. I felt an emptiness, a sense of incompleteness. I didn't understand why, because everything in my life seemed to be in its place. I had friends, family, work, but love, that love I had been searching for, wasn't yet present. It was then that an old woman, with a wrinkled but luminous face, approached me. With a look of understanding, she sat next to me without saying a word. Several minutes passed in silence, until finally she looked at me and said, "Love is not sought. Love is found. When you understand this, you will see that it has always been with you." Those words were like a flash of light in my heart. Something unlocked inside me, and I understood, once and for all, that love isn't something found outside, in the approval of others, or in the circumstances that surround us. Love is an energy, an essence within us, waiting to be acknowledged and released. What the old woman revealed to me that afternoon was a profound truth. Love doesn't depend on what we do, what we have, or what others think of us. Love is our essential nature. It's present in each of us, like the light that shines in the depths of our being. There's nothing we have to do to earn it. We only have to recognize it, accept it, and allow ourselves to be it. It's funny, isn't it? We spend our entire lives searching for something that was always here. We think love is out there, in relationships, in accomplishments, in people. But in reality, what we're searching for is our own capacity to love ourselves. Because love isn't an object that can be acquired. Love is the very essence of who we are. Love is not a passing emotion or a feeling dependent on external approval. Love is a state of being. It's a frequency, a vibration that exists beyond words, thoughts, and actions. It's the pulse of life itself. And when we connect with it, when we stop looking for it in the wrong places, it begins to transform everything. It's easy to get confused in this world, where we're taught that love is earned and lost, that love is something given and received conditionally. But true love has no conditions. Love isn't earned, lost, or owed. Love exists and has always been there, in the stillness of the heart, waiting to be fully lived. Love begins within ourselves. If we are not capable of loving ourselves, of embracing our essence with all that we are, we cannot expect love to fully manifest in our lives. Self-love is not an abstract idea. It is an act of consciousness. It is an act of acceptance. It is looking inward and recognizing that we are whole, just as we are, without needing to be different. Self-love doesn't mean being selfish or thinking only of ourselves. It means honoring our humanity, recognizing our strengths and vulnerabilities, our shadows and lights, and accepting ourselves completely. Because only when we accept ourselves can we offer genuine love to others. Only when we understand that we are worthy of love, without needing to meet any external expectations, can we radiate that light out into the world. Love isn't something you seek. It's something you are. And when we allow ourselves to be that, everything changes. Relationships cease to be a necessity. They become a reflection of who we already are. Love doesn't depend on what the other person does or doesn't do. Love is an energy that flows from us into the world, and that energy attracts everything we need. Because love, ultimately, is the force that unites everything that exists. Today, I look back and see how many times I looked for love in the wrong places, how many times I looked for it in others' expectations, or in what I thought I should be. But now, I understand that love isn't something you find. It's something you experience. And the best way to experience it is by giving ourselves permission to be ourselves, without fear, without doubt, without reservation. If you're searching for love, I invite you to look within yourself, to recognize the beauty that lies within you, to accept every part of you. Because love isn't something you have to achieve. Love is who you are. And once you understand this, you'll see how everything in your life begins to align with that truth. Love is the most powerful force in existence. And when you live it, everything else becomes an extension of that peace and harmony. Chapter 11. The day I realized that everything I need is already inside me. For years, I spent my life searching for something. I searched for answers. I searched for validation. I searched for something that would fulfill me, something that would tell me I was on the right path. I searched in books, in the words of others, in the approval of others, in the achievements I could accumulate, convinced that the external world would give me what my soul so yearned for. But in every search, I found only emptiness, as if something were always missing, as if my effort were a perpetual race towards something that was never quite achieved. I remember the exact day everything changed. I was alone in my room, watching the rain fall through the window. I didn't know what had brought me to that moment of stillness, but I felt like everything I'd been searching for outside was meaningless. For some reason, I couldn't stop thinking that maybe there was something inside me I hadn't recognized, something I'd never truly looked at, something that had no form, but was always there, waiting to be discovered. That afternoon, I decided to do nothing. Not to look for answers, not to talk, not to read, simply to remain in that space of stillness, without expectations, without distractions. And it was in that silence, in that empty space, that the revelation came. Everything I needed, everything I was looking for, was already within me. The peace, the love, the answer, the truth. It was all there, waiting to be seen, accepted, experienced. Suddenly, I realized I'd been looking outside myself, in everything external, for what is never really found outside. I'd been searching for something that was already a part of me, something that was always there, but that I couldn't see because my attention was focused on what I was missing, on what I thought I should have, on what I thought I needed to be whole. And then I realized that, in reality, there is nothing outside of us that completes us. There is nothing we can obtain, no achievement, no validation, that makes us feel more complete than we already are. Peace, happiness, contentment, everything we long for is already within us, deep within us. We just need to remember and allow ourselves to feel it. This discovery was liberating. Suddenly, the weight of life lifted, as if all the expectations I had carried for so long vanished. I realized that the purpose of life is not to find something that makes me whole, but to recognize that I am already whole just as I am. I am not incomplete, nor am I lacking. I am a whole being, a totality, a manifestation of life itself. For years, my mind had been busy searching outside myself for answers, trying to understand the meaning of life, seeking happiness or fulfillment. But what I had never understood is that life isn't something you achieve. It isn't a goal or a destination. Life is a continuous process of discovery, of acceptance, of presence. And true peace isn't found in the future, in what could be, or in what others think of us. Peace is found in the here and now, in the deep acceptance of all that we are. Once I understood this, everything changed. I no longer looked outside myself. I no longer looked to material things, people, or achievements. I no longer depended on the approval of others or the results I achieved to feel complete. I knew, deep down, that what I needed was within me, that I was enough just as I was, that I didn't have to be anything more or achieve anything more, just to be. This doesn't mean that life stopped, or that I stopped learning, growing, or interacting with the world. On the contrary, once I stopped looking outside myself for what was already a part of me, my life was filled with a new clarity. I began to see things with fresh eyes. I was no longer looking outside myself for what I couldn't find, and because of that, I was able to see what truly matters. I was able to appreciate the beauty in the small things, the peace in stillness, the love in human connections, the wisdom in silences. Life began to flow without much resistance. I wasn't trying to force it or control it. I simply went with the rhythm of the moment, trusting that everything I needed would come to me in its own time. And the most wonderful thing was that, by not looking outside myself, the answers began to emerge naturally. I no longer had to struggle to find what I was missing, because what I was looking for appeared spontaneously when I stopped chasing it. Today, I know that everything I need is within me. I don't need the world to tell me who I am or what I should do. I don't need external validation, the approval of others, or some kind of success to feel fulfilled. The peace I seek is within me. The love I long for is within me. The wisdom I seek is within me. Everything I am, everything I need, is already present within me. If you ever find yourself searching outside for what you already have inside, I invite you to stop for a moment, to look within and remember that you are already everything you need to be. There is nothing outside of you, that can complete what is already complete. Life is a continuous process of discovering yourself, of remembering the truth of who you are. Chapter 12. The day I understood that love is not sought, it is revealed. For a long time, I believed love was something you found. I believed I had to search for it, find it in another person's eyes, in the perfection of a moment, in the approval of those around me. I imagined love as a distant goal, something I could achieve if I just did the right things, made the right choices, offered the right sacrifice. I remember the day this idea crumbled, like a wall giving way to an invisible force. I was sitting by the sea, gazing at the horizon, the breeze caressing my face. Nothing in particular attracted me at that moment, only the profound silence that surrounded my being. But in that stillness, something awakened within me, like a feeling that had been building up inside me, without my knowing it. And that's when I realized that love isn't something you seek. Love reveals itself. Love is not an object we can possess, nor a goal we can achieve. Love is not something found outside of us, in the words of another, nor in the actions of another. Love is the very essence of our being, the energy that connects us to all that exists. It is who we are when we allow ourselves to be fully who we are, without fear, without expectations, without judgment. We spend our lives looking for love in all the wrong places, believing it's something to be earned, something to be given or received. But true love doesn't depend on anything or anyone. Love is a vibrational frequency, a state of consciousness that is available to us at all times, if only we allow ourselves to recognize it. At first, the revelation was disconcerting. If love was already within me, why didn't I feel it all the time? Why were there times when I felt alone, empty, disconnected from everything around me? The answer came slowly, like a whisper in the stillness of my mind, because I wasn't allowing love to reveal itself. I was so focused on searching for it outside of me that I wasn't giving myself permission to feel it within. For years, I had built walls around my heart, out of fear of pain, fear of vulnerability, fear of loss. I had closed the doors of my being. And every time love tried to enter, I rejected it. Love is a free energy, but when we imprison it within our limitations and beliefs, it cannot flow. Love cannot be forced. It cannot be manipulated or controlled. Love can only reveal itself when we let go of our defenses and open our hearts. That day by the sea, I understood that love is not a search, but a surrender. It is the surrender to our own essence, the full acceptance of who we are, with all our imperfections, our fears, and our shadows. Love is not about finding someone to complete us, but about allowing ourselves to see that we are already complete, that we are already loved simply for existing. From that day on, my relationship with love changed radically. I no longer looked for love in people, moments, or achievements. I began to search for love within myself, to recognize it in my very being. Whenever I faced a difficult situation, instead of reacting out of fear, I asked myself, how can I allow love to reveal itself here? How can I view this situation from the light of love, rather than the shadow of fear? And in doing so, I began to see the world differently. People who had previously seemed distant or alien began to show me their humanity, their vulnerability. I no longer saw others as separate beings, as objects to which I should give, or from which I should receive. I began to see people as reflections of myself, as equally divine, equally whole, equally deserving of love. And in that recognition, love began to flow effortlessly. Life stopped being a struggle for love. Love began to flow freely, like a river overflowing without restraint. It wasn't about receiving love from others, but about being love. And in being that, I realized that love was always there, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be revealed. If you've ever felt lost, searching for love outside of yourself, I invite you to pause for a moment. Allow yourself to feel the love that is already within you. Don't look outside for what you already are. Love isn't found in the approval of others, nor in the desire to be loved. Love is what you are when you allow yourself to be yourself, without conditions, without judgment, without fear. Love is a vibration that cannot be sought. It can only be felt. And it is here, now, in every breath, in every beat of your heart. You only need to open yourself to it. Allow it to reveal itself. Don't look for it outside of yourself. Love is already within you, waiting to be seen, to be experienced. Today I know that love isn't something you can find. Love is something that reveals itself when we are willing to see ourselves with compassion, when we are willing to accept our wholeness, our shadows, and our lights. Love is the act of embracing ourselves just as we are, without seeking anything else, without expecting anything more. If you find yourself on this journey, if you have felt lost in your search for love, I invite you to look within. Don't look outside for what you already are. Love is within you, waiting to be revealed. And when you let it be, when you allow it to flow freely, everything it touches becomes a manifestation of the divine. Chapter 13. The day I understood that death is not the end, but the awakening. For many years, I lived in fear of death. I thought of it as a closed door at the end of a long road, a door no one could open, a final barrier that would put an end to everything I knew. Death was the unknown, something beyond control, something beyond our understanding. I lived under the illusion that if I avoided thinking about death, if I kept busy, if I filled my life with activities, maybe I could evade that inevitable encounter. For years, I built a wall around my consciousness, avoiding any reflection on death, as if by doing so, I could avoid it. Until one day, in the silence of the night, I came face to face with her. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There were no screams or terrible images. It was a subtle sensation, like a gentle breeze that ran through my being. In that instant, I understood that death wasn't something to fear, but something to be embraced. Death isn't an end, it's an awakening. That night, as I sank into the deep emptiness of meditation, I felt as if my soul were shedding its earthly bonds. I didn't leave, nor was I dragged anywhere else. I simply saw myself as an eternal presence, beyond form, beyond time. And I understood, death is not the end of life. It is the end of the illusion that we are separate from the whole. Suddenly, everything I had previously held dear, my accomplishments, my possessions, my relationships, faded away. Not because they were insignificant, but because I understood they were just part of a much larger cycle. Life isn't about accumulating, about achieving earthly goals, but about experiencing the flow of existence, about allowing the divine to manifest through our humanity. Death, then, ceased to be an end and became a transformation, like the caterpillar that dissolves in its cocoon before becoming a butterfly. Death is the space where the old dissolves to make way for the new. Death is the liberation of the body, but not of the soul. The soul is eternal, and the body, though beautiful, is only a temporary vehicle. From that moment on, I no longer feared death. I learned to see it as the great teacher. Every time a part of me died, whether it was a belief, a relationship, or a project, I saw it as an opportunity to be reborn. Because true death is not the disappearance of life, but the transformation of form. Every farewell, every end, is only a prelude to something greater, something deeper. Today, when I face death, I no longer feel fear, but gratitude. Gratitude for the time I had, for the experiences I had, for the lessons it taught me, and, above all, gratitude for the opportunity to let go, to free myself, to surrender to what is. Death is the final act of faith. It is trusting that everything we have lived, everything we have experienced, has a purpose beyond our understanding. It is surrender to the eternal, to the divine, to that which never dies, to that which always is. If you've ever felt afraid of death, I invite you to look beyond the surface. Death is not the end. It's the opening to a higher level of consciousness. It's the recognition that we are so much more than this body, so much more than this earthly life. We are consciousness itself, the eternal being that dwells within all that exists. And if you ever experience a loss, whether of a loved one, a stage of your life, or a part of yourself, remember, in every ending, there is a beginning. In every death, there is a life that rises again. Death is only a door through which we pass to remember our true nature, to remember that we are not bodies that die, but souls that are transformed. Today, when I wake up every morning, I am grateful for this life I have, for this body that allows me to walk the earth, for this heart that continues to beat. But I also know that each day is an invitation to let go, to free myself, to die to the old versions of myself, to make way for the new. So the next time you feel fear, the next time you face darkness, remember, death is not the end. It's the awakening to a deeper, more authentic life, one more connected to the divine. Don't run away from it. Accept its call, because the moment you surrender to death, you will discover that you are only surrendering to life. Chapter 14. The day I understood that love is not possession, but freedom. I always believed that love was something you could possess. In my youth, when my heart was beginning to experience the first caresses of love, I thought that loving meant taking, that love was an exchange, a bond where two people came together to share something, to build something together. I believed love was a treasure that, once found, should be carefully guarded and cherished. I thought love was an embrace I shouldn't let go of, a possession I shouldn't slip through my fingers. But I soon discovered that, to the extent I tried to hold on to love, it faded away. It was as if, by trying to hold on too tightly, I was suffocating it, depriving it of its true essence. It was then, in a moment of profound solitude, that a whisper came to my heart. A whisper that told me that love cannot be possessed, that love is not something that can be locked away in a chest. Love, the wind whispered to me, is the freedom to be. It is not the union of two chains, but the dance of two souls that meet without needing to be bound. Love is the space where both beings can be, without losing themselves. I remember that revelation as if it had touched the very essence of the divine. Love is not a contract or an obligation. It is not an attachment or a chain. Love is the unconditional acceptance of what is. It is the acceptance of the other person in their entirety, with their lights and shadows, without the need to change or possess them. And, in that act of acceptance, we free ourselves. Today, I understand that true love is one that demands nothing in return. It is a love that gives itself without expectation, that doesn't ask, but always gives. It is a love that grows when it is free, not when it is restricted. Because in the freedom of the other lies the refuge for our own freedom. To love is not to hold back, but to allow the other to unfold, to transform, and, if necessary, to withdraw. Love is the act of letting go, of trusting. It's trusting that if that person is meant to be in our lives, they will be. And if not, they will leave. And that won't be the end, but a new beginning. When I understood this, my vision of love changed completely. I no longer saw the people I loved as possessions, as something I had to hold close so as not to lose them. I began to see them as free beings, beings with their own path, their own light. The freedom of another is the greatest demonstration of love you can offer. There is no greater gift than allowing another to be who they truly are, without pressure or expectation. And in that space of freedom, love can flourish infinitely.
Because love based on possession quickly fades, while love based on freedom grows organically, without force, without haste. In every relationship, when I allowed myself to let go of control, when I stopped trying to fit the other person into my own desires and expectations, love became purer, deeper, truer. Love began to flow like a river, without barriers, without restraints, without limits. I learned that love is like a whisper of the wind, gentle yet unwavering. If you've ever felt trapped by love, if you've ever believed that to love is to possess, I invite you to look inside yourself. Ask yourself, why are you afraid to let go? Why are you afraid to let the other person be free? Deep down, what you fear isn't losing that person, but losing control, losing the idea that love can be just an agreement between two souls. But when love is true, control doesn't exist. There is only flow. Today, when I love from the deepest place within me, without expectations, without fear. I love without trying to change, but rather by accepting beauty as it is. I don't seek for the other to be as I want them to be, but rather I give them the space to be who they truly are. And in that space, love grows, expands, and becomes something much greater than I ever imagined. Love is not the fusion of two souls that become one, but the union of two souls that accept each other as they are, without losing their essence. Each being remains unique, and in that uniqueness lies the beauty of love. Because love is the celebration of individuality, not its denial. If you ever feel like love is consuming you, like love is demanding too much of you, remember that true love doesn't ask. True love only gives, expecting nothing in return. And when you love from that place of freedom, then you are free, and the other is free too. True love is not a sacrifice, but an exaltation of life, a recognition of the divine in the other, without trying to appropriate it. Chapter 15. The day I understood that time is not an enemy, but an ally. All my life, I'd lived looking at time as if it were something I had to control, something that ran against me, something that, if not managed perfectly, would drag me mercilessly toward its inevitable end. Ever since I was young, I worried about the future, about what would come, about everything I hadn't yet achieved. Tomorrow always followed me like a lurking shadow, and the urgency of getting somewhere made me run, even when I didn't know exactly where. But, in an unexpected twist, time taught me that it's not an enemy to be defeated, but an ally that accompanies us every step of the way. It was an ordinary day, or at least that's what it seemed. I was sitting by a river, watching the waters flow unhurriedly, without worry, without fear. And it was then that I understood something that would change my perspective forever. Time is not a river that flows, but a river that flows. It's not something that ends, but something that is lived. We've been taught that time is limited, that every second that passes is a second lost. But that vision only drags us into anxiety, into the fear of not doing enough, of not becoming all we think we should be. We live with the constant pressure of time slipping away, without realizing that it is precisely this pressure that prevents us from living in it. I remember that at that moment, as I watched the water flow, a deep peace came over me. Time is not measured by how quickly we reach a destination, but by how well we live each moment. Every passing second is an opportunity to be fully present, to connect with who we are, to breathe deeply, and to be aware of the beauty of life just as it is. In that instant, I understood that time is a dance. It's not about racing toward the future or clinging to the past. Time is a rhythm, a beat that invites us to move with it, to adapt to its flow, to allow ourselves to be carried by its current without resistance. If we try to control time, we are rejecting it, and that resistance only leads to exhaustion. But if we learn to flow with it, to understand that everything comes when it should, that everything passes when it's time,
Then we can live in peace. Suddenly, I realize that time isn't an enemy robbing us of our days. Time is simply the measure of change, of transformation. What we are today won't be the same tomorrow. And that's not something we should fear. It's something we should embrace. Life isn't static, and time doesn't push us toward death. Time pushes us toward growth, toward evolution. Every second that passes is an opportunity to transform who we are, to reinvent ourselves, to experience something new. Time is not our master. We choose how to use it. It's not about rushing or staying stuck in the past. It's about being mindful of each moment, living with the full awareness that every second is a gift, not a burden. Time is our opportunity to create, to explore, to learn, to connect. Every passing moment is a seed planted in the fertile soil of our existence, and it's up to us how we nurture that seed. If you ever feel like time is running out, like you don't have enough, remember that time is not measured in quantity, but in quality. One moment fully lived is more valuable than 1,000 moments wasted worrying or constantly racing toward an uncertain future. Time is not what runs out. It is what we experience with love and presence. When we allow ourselves to live in harmony with it, time becomes a faithful companion that guides us toward growth. Today, I no longer see time as an enemy. I see it as an ally that teaches me to be patient, to trust the process, to understand that everything has its time. I no longer fight against time or feel guilty about what I haven't yet achieved. Instead, I surrender to the flow of life, knowing that each moment brings me closer to the truth of who I am. If you find yourself trapped in anxiety about the future, if you feel like time is slipping through your fingers, remember, time is not your enemy. It's just a reminder that life is constantly moving, that every second is an opportunity to be more, to be yourself. Don't rush, don't stop. Just flow, like a river that runs its course, slowly but surely. Today, I invite you to pause, to observe time as you would a close friend. Listen to its rhythm, join in its flow, and allow it to guide you toward what truly matters. Time isn't taking anything from you. It's giving you everything if you allow yourself to receive it with open arms. Chapter 16. The day I understood that questions are more important than answers. We live in a world that values answers. We've been taught that an answer is the end of the journey, the closing of a chapter, the confirmation that we've understood something. But what if I told you that answers aren't the end, but rather a pause on a much deeper journey? I remember the day I understood this lesson. I was alone in a room, surrounded by books and thoughts, tirelessly searching for an answer that would make sense of my deepest doubts. I had spent years searching for answers to questions like, what is life? Logically, what is my purpose? Logically, why do we suffer? And despite all the knowledge I had accumulated, I felt empty, unsatisfied. The answers didn't fulfill me. Rather, they left me with the feeling that something remained unclear. It was then that I met a wise old man in the mountains, a man who had given up on everything, even answers. He invited me to spend the afternoon with him. We spoke briefly, but when we did, his words weren't answers. They were questions. Questions that challenged my way of seeing the world, that invited me to look beyond the obvious, to explore what lies in the dark corners of the mind and heart. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Answers are like stones in the road. They help us walk a distance, but don't forget to look at the path." Those words resonated deeply within me. I realized that answers weren't the end of the search, but only a small part of the journey. True wisdom isn't in finding all the answers, but in learning to live with the questions, to embrace them without fear. Because in every question, there is a door that opens, a space for expansion and growth. Questions are what push us to explore beyond what we know. They're what challenge us to step out of our comfort zone and into the unknown. Every time we ask ourselves a profound question, we're opening a gap in our consciousness, allowing something new to enter. Answers, on the other hand, often close that gap, give us a sense of, "I already know," and stop us in our tracks. Today, I no longer desperately search for answers. I no longer feel anxious about a definitive conclusion. Instead, I've become friends with the questions. I allow myself to live with them, breathe them, without rushing to find something to calm them. Because I know that each question carries with it a vibration, an energy that can transform my life. The answers come when the time is right, but the questions are always there, open, inviting me to continue growing. True wisdom is not the accumulation of answers, but the ability to hold and contemplate questions without fear, to sit with uncertainty and allow it to guide us. Questions are what keep us moving, what lead us to the next level of consciousness. They remind us that life is not something we must fully understand, but something we must experience with wonder and humility. When someone asks you if you have all the answers, remember, answers are only a small part of the whole. Questions are what truly shape our existence, what allows us to continue exploring, growing, evolving. And in that process, we discover more about who we are, more about what truly matters. If you're at a point in your life where you feel lost, where answers seem to elude you, I invite you not to be afraid of questions. Ask yourself big questions. Ask yourself who you are at your deepest core, what you truly want in life, what love, peace, and happiness mean to you. Don't search for answers in desperation. Simply allow the questions to lead you on the path of discovery. Questions are not a sign of ignorance, but a sign of growth. They are the beacon that lights the way to a deeper understanding of life and ourselves. Don't fear questions. On the contrary, embrace them with gratitude, for they are what open the doors to truth. So keep asking, keep exploring, keep searching. Don't worry about having all the answers. Allow yourself to live with the questions, because in the end, the questions are the true search, and the answers are just one more step on that endless journey into the unknown. Chapter 17. The day I understood that time is not measured in hours, but in moments. When I was young, I used to measure time in hours, days, weeks. I lived under the illusion that time was something I could control, something I had to manage to achieve my goals. Hours were a kind of unit of measurement, and every minute that passed was an opportunity lost or seized, depending on how I viewed it. But time, like everything else in this vast universe, cannot be reduced to a simple number. Time isn't measured by clocks or calendars. Time is measured in moments, and those moments, when we truly experience them, are all that exist. I remember the first day I understood this. I was sitting in front of the sea, watching the waves roll in one after another, unhurriedly, without interruption. For a long time, I thought about nothing. There was no future or past. I was just there, in that eternal moment, with the sound of the water and the wind as my only companion. It was at that precise moment that I realized something I had never understood before. Time is not something measured in units, but in quality. Time is not an unstoppable current that drags us toward the future. Time is a sigh, a heartbeat, an instant that unfolds before us, and that can only be fully experienced when we are present in it. For years, I had strived to fill my life with moments that seemed important. I looked for moments of success, moments of achievement, moments that could be counted as milestones. But those moments, although valuable in their own context, weren't the ones that truly defined my life. The moments that truly matter are those that cannot be measured or counted, those that happen when we let go of expectations and surrender to the present. It was in silence, when I stopped expecting anything from life, that I experienced time in its true essence. There was no rush, no goals to achieve. There was only the here and now. And in that instant, I understood that every second can be infinite if we truly live it with attention. Now, when I look back, I realize that the most meaningful moments of my life aren't those marked on calendars or clocks. They're the moments of pure presence. When I shared a sincere glance with someone, when I immersed myself in the silence of nature, when I lost myself in the music of a conversation. Those moments, which cannot be recorded or measured, are what truly constitute the fabric of our existence. Time, as we understand it, is just a mental construct. It tells us when we should act, when we should rest, when we should go from one place to another. But true time isn't found in those clocks that mark the hour. True time is found in the moments that arise when we stop fighting the present, when we let go of control and allow the moment to unfold before us. If you feel stuck in a rut, if you feel like time is slipping through your fingers, I invite you to pause. Stop for a moment. Breathe deeply and observe your surroundings. Don't think about what you have to do next. Don't think about what you did before. Just be aware of this moment. Look at the sky. Listen to the wind. Feel your heartbeat. You'll find that when you truly allow yourself to be present, time ceases to be a burden and becomes a blessing. You no longer rush. You no longer feel exhausted by the relentless passage of time. Instead, you allow yourself to immerse yourself in the richness of the moment. And that's where you discover that life is never about achieving something, but about fully experiencing what's in front of you. Now, when I look to the future, I don't do so with anxiety. I don't do so with the fear that time is slipping away from me. Instead, I look to the future as an open field of possibilities, knowing that every moment is an opportunity to be present, to connect, to grow. Time is not a prison. It's a gift that unfolds in infinite moments, each as precious as the last. The lesson I learned by the sea on that leisurely afternoon was simple, but profound. Time is not what we've believed. Time is the quality of moments, not the quantity of hours. Life is not measured in years or minutes. Life is measured by the depth with which we live each moment, by the love we put into each action, by the attention we give to each breath. If you ever feel like time is dragging you down, remember this. Time is here, in the present. It's not in the future. It's not in the past. It's in the moment you hold in your hands, and it's as vast as you choose to allow it to be. So live. Live without haste, without fear. Live in the now with all your being, because in that now lies the totality of life. Time isn't measured in hours. It's measured in the moments when we are truly here, fully present. Chapter 18. The day I understood that love is not asked for, it is given. In the days of my youth, love was something I believed had to be earned, something you had to ask for and wait for someone to give it to you. I thought love was a hidden treasure, reserved only for those who could prove themselves worthy of it. It was as if love were a currency, something to be bought with acts of sacrifice and effort. But the years, with their gentle insistence, taught me that love is not a currency to be traded, nor a jewel to be acquired. Love is a flower that grows in the garden of the soul, without conditions, without expectations, only in the fertile soil of unconditional surrender. I clearly remember the day I realized this. I was walking aimlessly on a lonely street when I saw an old woman sitting on a bench, staring off into the distance. I didn't know her story or her life, but something in her gaze touched me deeply. I approached her without thinking and simply said, "Hello, how are you?" The old woman looked at me, and for a few seconds, her eyes reflected a wisdom so profound that I felt as if she were looking through the layers of my being. Then, with a gentleness that surpassed all expectations, she answered, "Love is not asked for, my son. Love is given, and it is given without fear, without reservation, without expecting anything in return. Those words pierced me. I didn't fully understand them at the time, but something inside me shifted. For years, I had believed that love was something I had to receive, something I needed to be whole. But the old woman showed me that true love isn't something you receive, but something that radiates from the heart out into the world, without strings attached, without barriers. Love is not a transaction. It is not measured by what we give in return, nor by what we expect to receive. Love is a constant flow, a current that never ceases, always ready to embrace, to heal, to transform. When I understood this, my life changed. I stopped waiting for love to come to me and began to offer it, to give it in every gesture, in every word, in every look. And it was there, in that unconditional surrender, that I began to experience true freedom. Because when there are no expectations, there is no fear. When there are no expectations, love is pure. And pure love has no limits, no boundaries. It expands, grows, and touches everything in its path. Sometimes we are confused into believing we should ask for love. We feel empty, waiting for someone to fill us, for someone to complete us. But the truth is that love doesn't fill voids. Love creates them. Love allows us to see the totality of who we are, without fear, without judgment. When we truly love, we don't seek to be loved. We simply love, because that is our nature. From that day on, I began to offer my love without reservation. I offered it to strangers, to friends, to my family, and to myself. And I realized that the more love I gave, the more love I received. Not directly, not in the way I had imagined, but through the peace that began to fill my life. Because love doesn't always show itself in the ways we expect. Sometimes, it shows up in a moment of silence, in a sincere glance, in a deep embrace. Sometimes, it shows up in the stillness of an afternoon, when there's nothing to ask for, only something to give. Love isn't asked for. Love isn't demanded. Love is given. And when we give it without expecting anything in return, we discover that love is greater than anything we could have imagined. It's the love of nature, the love of the stars, the love that flows without stopping, always seeking a place to rest. Today, I know that love isn't something you win or lose. Love is something you give. And the more we give, the more it grows, the more it multiplies, until it fills everything we are, until it transforms our world. Because love is the most powerful energy in existence. And that energy has no owner. It only has hearts willing to share it. If you ever find yourself searching for love, remember this. Don't look for it outside. Don't ask for it. Give it. Give it without fear, without expectations. And when you give it, you'll see that love will be by your side, everywhere, because it's always been there. You just need to open your heart to see it. If you have reached this point, it is because you want to learn more about Giordano Bruno's forbidden knowledge that will change your life forever. If so, I recommend that you look at the first link in the description. Chapter 19. The day I understood that the truth is not sought, it is revealed. In the early years of my life, I was convinced that truth was something to be sought fervently, like a hidden treasure, something to be found after an arduous search. I thought truth was a destination, something to be reached after traversing dark labyrinths, something only a privileged few would ever be able to see clearly. But, as is often the case, life showed me that truth is not sought, but revealed. It is not an object to be possessed, nor a prize to be won at the end of a long journey. Truth is a process. It is a silent awakening, a revelation that emerges from deep within us, unhurriedly and effortlessly, like a flower that slowly blooms in the sunlight. I remember one particular moment, a gray afternoon when I decided to confront the questions that tormented me. I had spent years searching for answers, reading books, listening to wise men,
looking for some clue that would point me toward the truth. But that afternoon, in the midst of my constant search, I sat on a wooden bench in a lonely park, my mind filled with doubts and questions. And it was then that suddenly, a deep calm came over me. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, nor a blinding revelation. It was a gentle sensation, as if the wind were speaking softly to me, whispering something in my ear. It wasn't an external voice, but something within me, a subtle vibration that told me, the truth is not sought. The truth is revealed in silence. At that moment, I understood that truth isn't something that can be forced into our lives. It's not a trophy to be won by force. Truth is a state of being, an opening of consciousness, a process in which we empty ourselves of our own preconceptions to allow what is real to reveal itself. Truth isn't something we discover. It's something we allow. And in that silence, in that surrender without struggle, was when the truth began to blossom within me. The truth wasn't something distant, something beyond me, but something already within, waiting to be heard. It wasn't an external, objective, or absolute truth. It was a personal, intimate truth, woven from the threads of my own experience, my own feelings, my own mistakes and successes. From that day on, I understood that truth isn't imposed or discovered through effort. Truth is revealed when we stop to listen to the inner whisper of our soul, when we surrender to the idea that there is nothing to conquer, nothing to obtain, but only a space of stillness where what is can be shown as it is. Truth isn't said, it's felt. It isn't explained, it's experienced. Perhaps the biggest lie we've been told is that the truth lies outside of us, that the truth is something we must reach for. We've been led to believe that we must go searching for it, ask questions, find answers. But truth is not a goal, it's not an end. Truth is a continuous process, a journey inward, a shedding of layers and layers of illusions until we reach the core of who we are. Thus, life is not a frantic search for an external truth. It is a journey to the center of our being, where truth has always been waiting, still, silent, unhurried, and unjudgmental. Truth is the very essence of being, and only when we stop searching for it outside, when we stop pursuing it and surrender to the present moment, can we touch it. Today, I know that the truth is not hidden in some corner of the universe, nor in the most sacred books. The truth is not in the future or the past. The truth is here, now, in this moment, at the heart of everything we are. We just need to learn to listen, to be attentive to the whisper of life around us. If you ever find yourself searching for the truth, remember this. Don't look outside. Don't keep running for answers. Stop. Listen. The truth is inside you, waiting to be heard. It's the calm that follows the storm. It's the silence after the noise. It's the space where everything falls into place. And so, little by little, you will stop seeking what you already have, and what is revealed will be enough. Truth has no form, no color. It cannot be defined. It can only be experienced. Chapter 20. The day I understood that abundance is a state of being. For years, I lived trapped in the belief that abundance was something to be sought and achieved. I thought abundance was an achievement, a destination reached only by those who put in the effort, who worked tirelessly. Abundance was a prize, a goal, and I had to be worthy of it. Years passed, and the search seemed endless. I had moments of abundance, yes, but also periods of scarcity. I realized that abundance wasn't constant, like a cycle that rose and fell depending on circumstances. But something inside me, something deep, told me there was a truth beyond all this. It was a peaceful afternoon, while meditating in the garden, when I realized that abundance isn't something you obtain or seek. Abundance is a state of being,
Abundance isn't about what you have or what you can achieve. Abundance is about how you live, how you relate to the world, how you see yourself. Abundance is not measured by possessions or material achievements. Abundance is the ability to see the world as a place full of infinite possibilities. It is the ability to receive not only the material, but also the intangible. Love, gratitude, inner peace. It is the recognition that everything you need is available at the exact moment you choose to open yourself to it. Today, I know that true abundance doesn't depend on the quantity of things we own, but on the quality of our relationship with the universe. When we recognize that we are part of a whole, that we are connected to everything around us, abundance flows naturally to us. Wealth is not a commodity that is accumulated, but an energy that is shared, received, and given in a continuous cycle. And in the end, abundance has nothing to do with what we get, but with what we give to ourselves. Abundance is a state of mind, a place of acceptance and gratitude. It's the awareness that, by being at peace with ourselves, everything we need will come to us at the right time. So, if you ever find yourself searching for abundance, remember this: don't look outside yourself. Look no further. Abundance is within you. It's in your attitude, in your outlook on life, in your capacity to receive and give love. Abundance is your birthright, a state you can achieve simply by awakening to the truth of your being. Abundance is not measured by what you have, but by who you are. And when you realize this, abundance begins to flow into your life as naturally as the wind caressing your face.